I'm just noticing that every word uttered is headed in the same direction. And I know the Warriors aren't going to get public with it because free agency is about to come, but I just feel like they would either refute it or they would do it behind the scenes. In other words, if you're the Warriors and you hear that podcast last week with Slater, Thompson, and Tim Kawakami, they're saying everything that they're saying about Klay Thompson, and Marcus is like, yeah, it's not looking good for him to come back. And yeah, he was mad throughout the year at the front office. If you heard all that and you were really planning to make a pitch at him and he was really important you to have him back, what would you do? Would you have Raymond Ritter call them? Say, actually, I don't know, think about this. Or think about that. Or here's actually what we're trying to do. Or would you just let it sit? What would you do?
You probably wouldn't just let it sit. You would probably do what you've done, I think, from the outset, which is, we can't imagine Klay being anywhere but with the Golden State Warriors. And, of course, we want Klay back. He started here. He's won here. Yeah, we want to have Klay back. But the one thing that they can't say, nor would they say, is there's a price point and there's a certain number that we want to pay Klay and you want to have him back. And even the initial report that came out back in, November, about the 2-year, $48 million offer that was purportedly offered to Klay Thompson, that came out. And, Klay reportedly rejected that offer. So it's the way for the Warriors to kind of protect themselves. Even, if this thing comes up in July and Klay signs elsewhere, well, all the breadcrumbs were there. The Warriors tried to give him an extension in the start of the year. The Warriors said all the right things about wanting him here. And then you get into the summer and then, the word comes out that, well, maybe Klay will wind up going somewhere else.
I just think in the PR world, we, the public, get prepared for things.
They prepare us.
I think it's why Steve Kerr said what he said a few weeks ago.
About, a couple more years.
Maybe I'll be done at the end of this contract.
Everything has a shelf life.
Yep.
He said.
Might need a new voice.
Yep.
I know I'm loving it now, but, that might be the end. And they're going to say might because, things could change. And they're obviously not going to paint it in ink, but, we're being prepared for things.
Always, yeah.
That's just how I feel right now about Klay Thompson. Anthony Slater on the morning show with regard to Klay maybe not feeling like he's a priority.
I mean, all the way up until now, it's not necessarily that Klay Thompson has been priority number one. Locking down his future is not necessarily priority one for the Warriors. And you can, from a cold-hearted business perspective, I think you can understand that from the Warriors side. But, Klay Thompson is Klay Thompson. And, he has pride in what he's built with the Warriors, who he still is in the league, what his statistical resume still says he is. And I think there's a fair, you want to be prioritized. And I don't think necessarily, the Warriors management all the way up into the top has from day one of this, they did with other people over the last couple of years, said, we have to do whatever it takes to make sure you're here long term.
Yep. We've had a lot of conversations about money, and the more I listen to this and think about it, I just don't think that's what it's about. I really don't.
Yeah, he just used the word that you talked about before, which is priorities. The prioritization of Klay Thompson is not job number one right now for the Warriors. And for Klay, it's the first time he's gotten a chance to really be a free agent. So for him, his free agency is priority number one. And if the Warriors are looking at him as a plan B, if not a plan C, well, then there's your disconnect. It's not so much about role or money. It's about priority.
They walked out of here a couple of months ago. Of course we want Klay back. This has absolutely been expressed to him. And then it goes silent, and I get that, right? They're not going to talk a lot about free agency. Quite frankly, they can't. The playoffs are ongoing. They don't want to get out ahead of those games. You've got Game 3 coming up tonight, et cetera, et cetera. I understand all that. I just think there would be some way to push back on what I feel like we're being walked to, like we are being brought to water so that we can drink. And I think the Warriors know that because this is going to be more emotional. And again, I could be wrong.
Yeah.
And he stays. I'm not saying it's out of the question, But I think that this is going to be way more emotional for Warrior fans than they sort of feel like right now if he is to go. And therefore, it feels to me like we're being prepped for surgery, right?
Yeah.
Right? Yep, we already put in the prescription. Go get that at the pharmacy.
Yeah.
Right? We're going to put a little bit of this ointment right there, get you all ready. All right. It feels like
the gown on yet? The gown with no back?
I mean,
the backless gown?
And what does it all stem from, according to Anthony Slater, The Athletic?
This has been a storyline for years that Klay, because he missed 2 seasons and got paid max money, owes something to the Warriors. And I mean, and you heard it in his exit interview answer, if people can remember it, but it's like, think about, it's kind of like think about all I did for the organization all up until the moment that I tore my ACL in Game 6 of the finals. And I think he was kind of expressing frustration that it's even a topic that he owes them something because of what they did way down the line. And yes, Draymond brought that up, and Draymond has a tendency to be very talkative, and still is. I know you guys talked yesterday about, what he said recently on the pool thing. I don't think it's like some deeply directed at Draymond for saying that. I think it's more frustration with the idea of, that storyline and like he owes something to the Warriors this summer because of what happened in 2009.
I don't know. Just an observation. I feel like I'm being walked down a hallway, and at the end of the hallway is Klay in a different colored jersey.
Yeah, and if it happens that way, then you absolutely were kind of prepared for it. All the things that we've gone through from what Anthony's saying, the narrative of him getting 2 free years of pay. The Warriors didn't ever put that out, but that's out there about, Klay, you earned 2 seasons worth of pay for rehabbing big time injuries. So, some fans are thinking, you kind of owe us because of that. I don't believe that, but there are fans who kind of feel that way. And the other thing about, the Klay Thompson camp, people who think that Klay's really fallen off and he turned down a contract that was probably reasonable back in November, and now the team keeps, like you're saying, kind of walking fans down a certain direction that now if Klay does decide to sign elsewhere, I don't think that there'll be a lot of fan ire toward the organization. There'll be sadness, but I don't think the people will look at Dunleavy or Lacob and say, I can't believe you let Klay go.
Well, it's a classic Bill Walsh type situation that he always handled. And the famous idea with the 49ers back in the day with get rid of him a year too early rather than a year too late. I know this one's a little bit more complex. You're dealing with things like luxury tax penalties and whatnot that was not a thing back in the days of Bill Walsh, but I think an appropriate conversation on the day that we lose Jerry West, because he has been tied to Klay Thompson, number one, seemingly for Klay's entire career. And then the other side to it is, Bob Myers and others have said this is literally, and I think Joe Lacob even said it in a statement that he released earlier today, basically saying he personified competitiveness. You've heard so many people say that today. Most competitive individual that we've ever met in our lives. And so therefore, as well-liked as he was, also a person who was a straight shooter, and the more I think about it, someone who probably would advise the Warriors right now, don't get emotional with whatever you're going to do. That doesn't even just apply to Klay. There's a lot of players on this team, Wiggins and Podziemski and Jonathan Kuminga for sure.
Looney and GP2.
There's another one, Looney. Kawakami saying just the other day, they're expecting to release him. It feels like this is about to get real unemotional.
Right.
And that in and of itself is going to be emotional for a lot of fans.
Yes, and Kevon Looney would be the first one. I think his date is June 26th, where his contract either becomes fully guaranteed or it's a partial guarantee and he's released. I think it's $2 or $3 million that he would get, and he would be out there on the open market. I don't think that they're going to guarantee his full amount, and that's going to be a hard one. And if Klay does go elsewhere, it's going to be emotional. But I do think you're right about the prep work that's been done through blogs and podcasts and other things that, breadcrumbs that have been released. And I think about it in terms of Brandon Ayuk, too, because he had the report come out from Matt Mayoko, and then Mike Silver came out, I think it was yesterday or the day before I was off, talking about $26 million appears to be the number. And before, Mayoko said, there's one of three things that can happen. And we all know that. He either gets an extension, plays the fifth-year option, or door number 3.
Trade.
Could happen.
Yep.
So there's a certain amount of priming of the pump that is happening with Ayuk. It's happening with Klay. And it's just smart PR, especially when it comes to Klay Thompson.